Executive Lounge with me, Nhyira Addo, and this is the Thought Leadership Show that brings you insights from the lives of men and women who are always trying and successfully scaling the daunting heights of starting their own businesses or managing institutions here at home and around the world. Today, I am bringing you a couple of conversations from two different people who themselves are passionate about shaping the future we live in. The very first person is the current of the 2019 World Innovation Summit on Education or for Education Prize Laureate. He is the CEO of the San Diego-based High Tech High, as a network of charter schools and a graduate school of education, and they're very hands-on and technology or TVET, technical and vocational training focused. And he had some very interesting insights on how we can impact on the next generation with TVET, as well as spotting the great talent within the young people that around us. And then after that, I'll also bring you a conversation that I had with the founder of the Africa Leadership Group, Fred Wanaka, who also has this audacious goal of developing 3 million leaders by the year 2035. Larry Rosenstock is the first person that I will be talking to. And let's just take a quick listen. Larry Rosenstock.
Yes.
You're an embodiment of humanity in one being.
Oh, thank you very much.
Your passion just, filled the room both times that you spoke.
Yes.
How does it feel? Of course, you're happy to be selected as the Wise Prize for Education Laureate 2019.
Right. Well, it's always great to have one's work acknowledged, because you're just working all the time and doing it, and in a way, and to work with wonderful people when you're doing that work is also very nice. It never occurred to me that I would be getting this award at all, though I really appreciate it, because I am an internationalist at heart. I was raised that way, of parents from different countries, etc., and I think that we're all one. And so what I try to do with kids, with their parents, when they're in distress, is bring people together.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit about your work at High School High.
Yeah, High Tech High, that's okay.
High Tech High.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant concept.
Right.
How did you come to the moment where you thought, this is what I ought to be doing?
Well, it was Einstein once said it was easy to discover the theory against relativity. All I had to do was ignore a few basic axioms. So I just had to ignore a few basic axioms about what schools should feel like and be like. And we're a public institution, which means we get public dollars. So it's not like I can't leave the reservation, so to speak, right? So I tried to have as few rules as possible. A spirit of warmth and embracement and not of punishment to children or peers, certainly. That it would be project-based, because just like what you're doing right now, we all derive great satisfaction from making something that was not there before, whether it's me and woodworking or somebody who makes dinners, and so I have kids getting patents, doing beautiful work of all kinds, and several times a year in every one of the schools there's an opening for them to show their work, and you can't even park within 6 blocks of the schools because the parents are all in there, and the parents are seeing what their children are doing, from little ones to upper ones, sometimes on teams, sometimes individually. That's another thing. Another thing that's very different, a lot of people come to us and take some of our teachers, because then they can take it all, which is great, because we don't own them, and they go to another country to work, and then we have to find another new teacher, and that's fine too, okay? And so let's say, for example, that it's one of those nights when everyone's coming in to see the work, and all of the parents are looking at your work, and I'm right over here, and none of the parents are looking at my work. Nobody is being rude to me. No person in my position is making you feel bad. What's making me feel bad is that everyone's looking at everyone's work except mine. So I start to feel, what is it? What's he doing? Oh, what's that one doing? And what's he doing? I want to do more of that the next time because I want my kids' work to be recognized as well. So just let it happen naturally by itself. Don't force it, just let it happen. I want it to be a place where people are respected and treated fairly. And if you do that with the adults, they hopefully do that with the children. And the other thing that was really important was a broad range of students. As I've said before, I'm really an internationalist at heart, and I want a school community that is reflective of the broad demography of the area around us where we are, and we have that. And then finally, even though some people now think that perhaps going to college is a little bit passé, I mean, okay, some people in the tech sector, they just jump right in Northern California. Okay, but those are unusual. I still have the theory that yes, colleges are too expensive, perhaps, but if you do that and if you have that agency of having done that, we know the predictive validity of what the rest of your life is going to be like. So we decided to have an acute, sharp way to get kids into top colleges. How did we do that? Well, one way was we have five high schools out of our 16 schools. Every one of them has a college placement officer. What are the characteristics of a college placement officer at High Tech High? I've done it so many times because some of them leave to go to universities and work in admissions, is that I can almost hire them sight unseen. They have two characteristics. They worked in a highly selective college admissions office for at least 3 years, and they're the first member of their family to go to college. That's all I need to know. And that's all 5 of my people in that role. And the other thing that we decided to do, because we wanted to be a place that was joyous, we also knew that we had to really, really get kids into top colleges. And I want to tell you a little bit of demography of our kids. They are, and we've got 6,000. That's across kindergarten all the way up. They are 72% of color. They are 50% free or reduced lunch, which, in the United States, that's an indicator of poverty, is if you get a free lunch. Well, it's halfway to the poverty line, then you get, okay. And they're the first member of their family to go to college. And I can almost hire them sight unseen because they have everything. They work in a college. They know what it's like to be in that child's position. They come from a similar background. And it's a great crew. It's a really great crew.
It is.
And that's how we did it.
Fantastic stuff. Now, the work you do with the children is very activity and project-based.
Yes.
How has that impacted on their own development as individuals and the shaping of their minds to be, live their potential?
I think a lot, and maybe it's the bias I had being a carpentry teacher, because when I was a carpentry teacher, that's what you're doing. And as I said, sometimes people say, yeah, but what about math? And I say, carpentry is all math. The whole thing is math, except I'm doing purposeful math, right? I'm doing this, I know that I want to make this thing, I want to make this chair, but first I have to understand all of its dimensions. And it's going to take me a while to figure that out. So I want kids sometimes having direct instruction of math. Of course you do that. But I also like math that's purposeful and relates to something. It could be a sport. It could be to music. I mean, as in how music works. It could be anything. And so I like to connect those things so that what I never like to hear is when a child says, why do I need to know this? I mean, that happens, of course. But I want them to really want to do something. That was the thing I read today about people need to do things differently, and so that they can do things differently the next time. And you want kids to feel like, oh yeah, I can do that. Yeah, oh, that kid did that. I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to try that. You know, that's what you're trying to. It's not like I'm going to be better than them. It's not like I'm going to scare them. I'm going to do that too. I want to be noticed. People like to, they like to be appreciated. That's what we're trying to do.
You reach into the core of the being of the children you work with, and it showed in the video that was played. You know, and we'll share this with our audience.
Most likely
as well.
to succeed.
Yeah. What have you learned about the humanity of the young child over the period that you've been doing High Tech High?
Children don't grow at the same pace. Children don't all have the same strengths. They don't all have the same weaknesses. But they need to be treated fairly at all times and honored and respected, even when they're behaving in ways that are not honorable. You treat them that way, and I've done that my whole career, starting even before High Tech High, because Boston, if you read about Boston, that was a rough, you know, I saw bricks being thrown at children on buses, just like happened in Mississippi, and that scarred me for life, you know, and that's not what happens where I am now. But what I love is, you know, they say about the late bloomer, the kid who's a late bloomer.
That's right.
And guess what? They bloom.
They do.
And then they bloom. And so I'm guessing you might be the same way. But to me, I have a special place in my heart for those ones in particular. I do for everyone, of course, but for those ones, I can see it in them. I can see it in them early on. I said, okay, I'm going to get this kid. I'm going to get this kid. I'm going to get him he's going to reach it. I'm not going to get him in a negative way. I'm sorry. I mean, he's going to make it. He's going to make it. I'm going to make absolutely sure that he makes it. Yeah. Well,
I'm going to end this conversation in the next couple of minutes, but before then, you actually influence legislation.
I did.
To mainstream vocational and project-based work.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
What was the process like, and what has the impact been?
Well, we were looking at kids who were doing internships when I was at Harvard, and internships are very powerful. The data is fantastic. Now, you need to be 16 years old in the United States to be in a hospital internship. Terrific. Those are great internships. Why? Because when kids go into hospitals to help out, they learn how to take care of themselves, because they're watching all these things, and then they start taking care of themselves. Okay, so when we made the law, it said students will get strong experience in and understanding of all aspects of an industry, including finance, planning, management, underlying principles of technology, labor issues, community issues, health and safety issues as they pertain to that industry. Why have I memorized that for decades? Because who knows what type of sector a child is going to go into. So we made it in such a way that whatever sector it was, they would already have the agency to step into it, and nor would they be in a risky situation in a place that they should not be in. For example, here's one of them: cosmetology programs. Cosmetology programs, I'm opposed to. No, it's not because I'm bald.
I'm sure there's a more noble.
I remember I first lost my hair. Maybe I remember who said you're losing your hair a long time ago. I was in law school, but and I said, oh, and I looked at myself then and I said, yeah, I am. No, it's because the pay of people in cosmetology is really, really low. And so we just said, rightly or wrongly, when we were writing the laws, a few of us at Harvard, we just said, oh, let's not put that in there, not because it's a bad thing for a human being to do, but you can leave the school right now and go do it if you're 15 years old. You know, it's just you don't need this program at all. You know, that's how low it is. I'll tell you another quick story about that. So when we were doing the New American High School, we had to go around the whole United States and pick 5 schools and then bring them back to the DC and they would come in their own teams. So I have visited schools all over the country, and it's rather interesting that when we were in one school and we had this position that we'd already written in a law about cosmetology, and the principal likes this new building that she's got in the Midwest. It's so sad, it's funny. And so, because she doesn't know how we're going down the hallway, and we only went to schools that people told us to go see, and she said, and you got to go see my new program, cosmetology. Yeah. And they're usually pink, by the way, which is okay. And so we go up to the door, and it's all the lights off, and there's a glass. And she goes up to it, and now she's embarrassed because everyone that we went to wanted to be one of the 5 because you got all this juice from the feds and all that. So she said, "Oh, and here's my cosmetology program," and so we're behind her, and she's locked, and she's trying to get the door open, and it's completely dark. Wow. And so we're looking at each other like you and I would say, she has no idea who she's talking to. We're not doing any cosmetology.
If only she knew.
It got worse, brother. Right. It got worse. So now we go in. It's all absolutely dark, and that's the other thing, cosmetology, there's no windows. So she turns on the light, and there's 2 girls, like 14 years old, and they got the cosmetology, they got those big chairs.
Yeah, and they had their feet up.
The 2 of them are sitting like this, just shooting the breeze, and one of them said, and one of them said, they're talking to each other, and I'm sorry that I got interrupted, and so I'll start again. So 2 of them are sitting way back in the chairs, and then the principal's really embarrassed, and we all have this moment of silence, and then one of the girls says, "Our teacher's out again today," and then there was still a silence, and the other girl said, "Wow. But she's really sick this time."
Wow.
It was really sad. It was so it's the good, the bad, and the ugly. You see that when you travel the country, I learned so much. I learned so much from other people in other schools, and that's why when people come to my school, I said, don't feel like you need to take all of it. Just take the parts that work for you and make new parts that work for you in your setting. That's the problem that we have is standardization is not...
Sorry, 1 second.
Okay.
Oh, wonderful.
So in the first part of our 2 special conversations, you heard Larry Rosenstock, the CEO of High Tech High, a San Diego-based school that teaches TVET. But they specially target children from disadvantaged communities. And they've made some great success. Now, that's one man's passion leading him down the path of ensuring that they have the right people to man the future. The next conversation is with another man whose vision is to develop 3 million leaders on the African continent by 2035. Fred Wanaka, the founder of the African Leadership Group, African Leadership Academy, African Leadership University. Interesting thoughts coming up right now.
3 million leaders by 2035.
Yes.
16 years away.
Yes.
Achievable?
I think so, yes. It's a moonshot, which means the idea sounds impossible when it's initially envisioned. But with the right creativity and imagination and resilience, it's possible.
Okay. Now, over the years, you've built what I would, for the lack of a better expression, called an educational behemoth out of Africa. Clearly, it's demonstration of the moonshot and the work towards achieving that. What has been the ingredients that have kept the group together and a vision on course?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's a very clear purpose. We have a North Star which we're working towards, that everyone is aligned around. and that guides us when we try to make decisions and making choices and so forth. There's a very clear purpose, which is the transformation of Africa by developing its next generation of leaders. The second ingredient that has helped us on this journey is an incredible team. We have a dedicated team, which is now almost 400 people, and is growing every day, of exceptional individuals who are passionate about what we believe in and rolling up their sleeves and really making this dream come alive. And then the third ingredient is an outstanding group of supporters from all around the world, who are joining us in this mission and providing funding and advice and providing internships for the young leaders we're producing and hiring them and mentoring them and so forth. There's a whole global network of today almost about 50,000 people who are involved in some way or another who are making this thing come true. So it's very important to realize that this is not a one-man show. There's a huge movement that's building around this that's going to make this thing come alive. So those are some of the the ingredients that are coming together to catalyze this change. Okay.
Now, beyond the synergies that you've leveraged to grow this as you work towards that North Star of raising 3 million leaders by 2035, what would you say has been some of the hurdles that you've needed to get over? Because I'm sure in any pursuit there will be some environmental challenges, even sometimes from within yourself. What are some of the things that you've had to overcome to keep on course?
Oh, there are many challenges. I mean, one of the things that is our slogans of the African Leadership Group is "Do hard things." Right? Well, you see that it's written on my.
Right.
What is it? Somewhere. Right, exactly. Do hard things. And that's because entrepreneurship is a hard pursuit. It's not an easy thing. If it was easy, it would have been done already. So, of course, there are obstacles every day. Everything from finding the right people for different roles that we need. That's one of my biggest headaches. Is just always, do I have the right people on my team? So I spend about 50% of my time recruiting people, who can take on different parts of what we're doing. Funding has been a big challenge. Continues to be a big challenge. We need to raise a lot of money, and so I spend a lot of time traveling, meeting donors, meeting investors, trying to raise the capital that we need. Regulation and dealing with government. When you're trying to do something innovative and unconventional, it doesn't quite fit into the boxes that have been created. So, getting governments that are willing and open-minded enough to realize that we need a different way of doing things, because the conventional path we've been on is not working.
That's right.
If it was, we wouldn't have youth unemployment problems. We would be developed. We would have good governance. We don't have it. So we need a new way of doing things, and trying to get society and government to shift their way they think to be more in line with the innovation that we're trying to drive has been a challenge. And then finally, the mindset of society and our teams, sometimes even when you're trying to go against the status quo, because we all in society feel safer with tried and tested methods and conventional methods.
Don't rock the boat.
And yes, don't rock the boat, don't change things. But when we have less than 16 years before we have the largest workforce in the world, and when we're going to be 40% of the world's population by the end of the century, we can't go about doing things a conventional way. We need unconventional thinking. We need reimagination. We need innovation. And so that makes me uncomfortable. You're changing the status quo, and so that's one of the things that we battle all the time, having to say, but this isn't the way it's normally done. Say yes, exactly. We need a different path, and that's scary for people. So these are some of the obstacles that we're going through.
The vision. Let's fast forward to 2035. We have 3 million leaders. Smart, bright, energized, and they're ready to take on the mantle to transform the continent. That's 3 million out of more than 1 billion people. One would say, in terms of the ratio, they would have an uphill task to try and transform mindsets, get people rallying around the vision of the new Africa. What do you think is required to create the right ecosystem that would make it possible for the 3 million to catalyze the transformation, working with the rest?
Yeah. So I mean, the way we looked at it is that the most important job that this next generation of leaders needs to do is to create prosperity for Africa. We need to create jobs, we need to create income, we need to create wealth. Because the previous generations of leaders we've had different battles to fight. 60 years ago, they were fighting independence, or colonialism. They wanted and that was largely achieved. Then, the leaders that came in to play about in the last 15 to 20 years, they were fighting political instability and coup d'etats and trying to create more democracy and stability, and that's been done. Now what this new generation leaders needs to do is to create prosperity, right? Because we're politically independent, but economically we're not independent yet.
Right.
So, in order to do that, therefore, what we need is, I would say, an environment that really allows these entrepreneurial leaders to bring their creativity and their imagination to solve the big challenges and capture the big opportunities facing Africa. So we need really to remove red tape, to not get in their way. We need investors to put capital in these leaders, and we need people to support them and to join their teams and work with them to solve these problems, because we're trying to create an army of problem solvers, right? Passionate, imaginative problem solvers who will pick different challenges in healthcare, education, and governance, climate change, agriculture, really, and say, how do we use our best brains, our most passionate people to solve our biggest problems and to capture our greatest opportunities. And the math is very simple. We said that by 2035 we'll have the largest workforce in the world. 1 billion people needing jobs.
That's right.
Now, we believe that if you're a successful entrepreneur, you should be able to create about 300 jobs. So we divided the 1 billion by 300 jobs. That's how we get to 3 million leaders.
Right.
You see what I mean? So that's the formula. So the task we've set to each of these 3 million leaders, make sure you are employing 300 people each. And if you do that, then you can create the jobs we need on this continent. So, 3 million relative to 1 billion seems like a small number. But what I believe is that you don't actually need a lot of leaders to change Africa. You need a few highly capable leaders. If you think about what Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu did, just 2 people to transform South Africa. What did Kwame Nkrumah do for Africa? You look at leaders today who are, whether it's in science and technology, the Google founders, what they've done, Elon Musk. You need a few leaders to really transform society. You go to Rwanda, you see what President Paul Kagame is doing for that country. So, with a few good leaders, Africa can really achieve massive progress. Singapore did what it did because of Lee Kuan Yew. So, the 3 million is actually even too many than what we need to transform Africa. If we have so if a few leaders can achieve massive change, imagine what 3 million will do.
Sorry, he gave some really good examples, and as a matter of fact, it only takes one person to light a fuse and start a revolution. But one of the critical things that have always come to the fore about Africa is that we've had succession of bad leadership or ineffective leadership. What do you think it's going to take for us to not only transform the current leadership that we have, but how that leadership interfaces and creates room for the next generation of leaders?
Well, the one thing I'll say is that while Africa is definitely not out of the woods in terms of its development, it's important to acknowledge that we're far better off today than where we were 30 years ago. By and large, the leaders we have today are more competent. They, I think, have a better understanding that they need to serve their people and not just enrich themselves and be corrupted. So, the levels of political instability have gone down significantly in Africa. More governments are really serving the will of their people, and you have more capable people going into the public sector with the right training and so on. So it's a lot better than it was, but it's still nowhere near where it needs to be. I think part of it is just the passage of time. People are going to pass on, and you have a generation of people who are, Robert Mugabe is gone, and people are eventually going to move on, and there'll be a new generation that is growing up and that is going to assume the mantle of leadership. And then part of it is also, I believe that the natural pressures of population growth and youth unemployment will create the right incentives for leaders to realize that if I don't deliver for my people, I'm out.
Yeah. Because
young people in Africa will not wait forever. If they don't have jobs, they don't have opportunity. Eventually, they'll be in the streets. And so leaders will need to realize that they need to perform, they need to deliver prosperity, they need to create jobs, they need to create opportunity. If they do that, then they stay in power. If they don't, then things will change. So at the end of the day, I think that the conditions, the right citizens are they are becoming more demanding. They are holding their leaders accountable, and I think that will ensure that leaders ultimately perform the task that they need, which is to serve society.
If in looking at Africa, Ghana in particular, the very fine-grained and skilled Ghanaians who are building the rest of the world, so to speak. We've had a brain drain. Is it about time we had a brain gain? And if so, what do you think is required to make that happen?
So first of all, I think that brain drain is only a problem when you're producing human capital at low scale, which is why we said we're going to do this at big scale. We're going to produce 3 million leaders, so that if 200,000 of them leave, if 300,000 of them leave, there's still 2.7 million left on the continent to solve our problems. India is a good example. They've trained hundreds of thousands of millions of engineers and so forth. A lot of them went to the States, but most of them stayed back on the continent. So today you have Microsoft run by an Indian, Google run by an Indian, and but then there's many more engineers who stay behind India and they're driving it. So I think that if we produce human capital at scale, then brain drain is not a problem. But I do believe that yes, those who have gone abroad and have got skills can come back and play a massive role. They can bring back their knowledge, their networks, their capital, and help to transform Africa, like you're seeing in India and China, when many of the people who went have now come back. Now there are many disadvantages of the protectionism and closed borders that we're seeing today in the rest of the world. But the one good thing about it is that it will send our people back.
True.
So, like Donald Trump and all his policies means that it's harder. Exactly. So actually, that's the one good thing about the Trump presidency is that it's now much harder as an educated Ghanaian to stay in the U.S. So I'm looking forward to all those people to come back.
That's great.
And then they can actually come and solve our problems.
In terms of the work you've done and continue to do, you've been appointed by Paul Kagame, President of Rwanda, to help with innovation.
Well, I'm the chair of the Rwanda Convention Bureau to attract conventions and meetings and tourism, business tourism to come to the country. Yeah.
And one would ask, would you have accepted a job like that if it was given to you in Ghana? And have you tried to, as it were, make a contribution
to Ghana?
To Ghana.
Well, I'm very passionate about Ghana and want to see that the continent, the country, be successful as possible. So there are some things in the works which are which will be coming up soon in Ghana that I'm working on, to bring our model to the country. And I've been having some discussions with some key leaders to see how I can contribute the most. I think before the conditions in the country, first of all, I haven't been approached by many people to, and I think I, as an entrepreneur, I go where I find the best conditions, where I will not be hampered by red tape, where I can find the right investment and where the right infrastructure exists and so forth. So unfortunately, Ghana is not the most competitive, has not been the most competitive in those regards to this point. So, you know, I've gone to other countries where I found the right environment, and the environment in Ghana is improving, and so and also I think we've had time to figure out the kinks in our model and other parts, so that, you know, when we now come to Ghana, you can deal with some of those challenges more. Because what you do, I believe that when you're starting a new venture, you don't necessarily need to go where you're needed the most or where the market is biggest. You need to go where the headaches are fewest and get your model perfected. Because when you're trying to sort out your model, you don't now want to be dealing with corruption and lack of power and, you know, lack of water and all these things. That's not your core business. You know, and so you want to go to a place where you won't be bothered. There's no security problems. There's nothing. You can figure out your model, and then you can come to other. When you now have your model figured out, you can bring it to other places where you can now deal with all the noise of that you might find in other markets.
Well, I'm going to bring this to a close shortly, but before then, you attended the WISE 2019, and there seemed to be, especially from the perspective of Larry Rosenstock's, you know, award as the laureate for the WISE Prize for Education. Vocational education has been a thing that we've, you know, not extolled very well in Ghana. We turned our technical or polytechnics and upgraded them in nomenclature to universities. As if to say that it's better to be in the grammar as opposed to do the hands-on stuff. What's your take on the place of technical vocational education?
I believe that technical vocational education is one of the most crucial types of education that we need to really improve our state as a in Africa. If you look at Germany and Switzerland and all these countries, the reason they're wealthy today is because of technical vocational education. We've done a poor job of branding it in Africa, so that, you know, young people think going into vocational education is a failure. You know, and parents want their children to go to university, and, you know, and the status symbols in society all have university degrees. That needs to change, because not everyone needs to go to university. You know, vocational education can rapidly skill up people from courses as short as 2 weeks to, you know, 6 months, 1 year. That's the way in which, you know, we need to learn how to make things in Africa. We are importing everything, furniture and, you know, food and all these things that we should be able to make in Africa, right? And that's because we don't have enough people who are trained in the trades and so forth. So I think it's absolutely crucial. We need to rebrand it. We need to get young people to realize that actually the vast majority of people should be going into vocational and technical training. Learn some skills, learn how to make things yourself, combine it with entrepreneurship and capital, and then make your own living. And so I really hope we can find a way to achieve this in the coming years, because it's much faster way to train people, and it's actually more relevant to the world that we're in and the world that we're going to. So I applaud, you know, WISE for having recognized Larry in that way, and I think when we get more recognition like that, so, you know, when we have vocational schools and being recognized as the most prestigious, you know, who's the Harvard of technical vocational, you know what I mean? And so we need to really build those powerful brands. And then young people will be attracted into that sector, and I think that's
in Larry's case. There was a part of his work that involved pushing a legislation. Whose responsibility would you say it would be to mainstream and put this agenda on the front burner? Should it be the technical universities or the technical colleges, which themselves are owned by government, or it should be the government education machinery itself that should say, this is what we need for the future?
I think it's a whole collaboration that's needed. You know, parents need to change their mindsets about this. Students need to change their mindset. Government, the schools themselves. Society as a whole needs to come together to realize that we need to create a generation of people who know how to make things with and who, because a lot of research shows that to acquire any skill, only 10% of it can be learned in the classroom. 20% of it is learned from your peers and your mentors, and 70% is learned by doing. Right? You learn best by doing. Yet today, most education is focused only on that 10%. We're not unlocking. So we need to unlock 100% of human potential. And vocational training and learning by doing, I think, apprenticeships and so forth is a powerful way to learn. And somehow we got lost on this university track that everyone needs to go to university, and millions of young people in Africa today are unemployed because of this thing. So we need to take it very seriously. It must be concerted national effort and a continental effort to really drive home the fact that get a skill, any skill, and learn how to learn, and create your own job, because no one is going to create jobs for you. And if we achieve this mindset change, we'll be able to uplift ourselves as a continent and stop depending on the rest of the world for aid.
Well, I can't ask for more than what I've got out of you today, and I look forward to having a chat with you again. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
So that was the founder of the African Leadership Group, Fred Wanaka. Now, let me share my takeouts from the two conversations with Larry Rosenstock, the World Innovation Summit for Education Prize Laureate for 2019, and Fred Wanaka. Now, according to Larry, it is important to have a belief in the abilities of every child, that extended to every individual, and that treating them fairly would help unlock that potential. He also demonstrates by his own life that it's not always the things that you dedicate the most of your time to that makes the difference. Sometimes the things we look upon as our hobbies, our pastimes, actually hold the key to the impact we were born to make. So while in law school, he was still teaching carpentry to urban youth. Who knew that was the beginnings of how High Tech High was going to be founded? Now, Fred Wanaka, interesting thoughts on scaling skills. Now, if we're going to turn this continent around, we need to be able to produce quality skills or empower people with quality skills on a large scale. That means we have to fashion our education and ensure that it's delivering value. He also mentions that environment is key. Entrepreneurs today are going to first look at the environment within which they work and move into those spaces and perfect their models before they can start going into terrain that will require a lot more energy and resource. And the final thing is that we have what it takes to unlock human potential, but that can only be achieved if we start looking at ensuring people are learning from their environment. They're learning from their peers. They're learning from people around them, and through play and through practice, as opposed to just learning from books. These are some thoughts from the two conversations I brought you today on the Executive Lounge. In March, we will be celebrating Ghana and women in a big way. Look out for 5 explosive editions of the Executive Lounge throughout March, featuring female guests only. This has been another edition, and we hope to come your way with more. I leave you with a song by Wuta, and they call this one Big Dreams. You have what it takes to achieve those big dreams. Go on, dream big. Go forward, make rain. Shalom.
What's up? Coming out of the ghetto with the gunshot always.